モーサテプレミアム特別インタビューです。 KKR ブラックストーンと並ぶアメリカ三大投資ファンドの一つ、運用資産総額3800億ドル、日本円で53兆円のカーライルグループ創業者デイヴィッド・ルーベンシュタイン氏が先日来日、モーサテの単独インタビューに答えました。主なポイントは3つです。欧米投資家はなぜ日本投資に動いているのか。バブル後の高値を更新した日本市場でどの分野、どのような企業に関心があるのか聞きました。2つ目、アメリカの景気後退は深いのか浅いのか。異次元利上げの行方、その先の利下げのタイミングはいつなのか。そして米中関係の見通しをどう考えているのか聞きました。果たして欧米投資家の日本投資は続くのか、そのために必要なことは。インタビューの本題に入る前に、まずこのルーベンシュタインさんがブルームバーグテレビで自身がインタビュアーを務める番組について聞いてみました。そのインタビューを元にまとめた著書の日本版が去年日本でも出版されています。こちらです。世界を変えた31人の人生の講義。英語版の元のタイトルは How to Lead、 どう導くかというものです。ずらりと著名人が並んでいるんですが、アマゾンのジェフ・ベゾスさん、ウォーレン・バフェットさん、アップルのティム・クックさん、日本からは過去にソフトバンクの孫正義さん、そして直近では数ヶ月前に FRB のパウエル議長がゲストとして登場する人気のトークショーなんです。
I'm going to interview next a couple weeks. I'm interviewing Kim Kardashian. You ever heard of her? Kim Kardashian, very famous person in the United States. But I just interviewed Bill and Hillary Clinton together, and that'll be airing soon.
Then in the show, I noticed you didn't have any single paper.
Okay, well, you can have notes if you want. No, I have a different style, and what I do is I'll tell you my theory. What I do is I prepare the questions in advance, and I give them to the person because I'm not a journalist, and I want to make sure they're not going to be feeling I'm going to trick them, so they see there's no trick questions. I have written the questions myself, so I've kind of got it in my brain. So I wrote them. And then I don't have anything here because I've noticed that when you have notes, you look down. It's a crutch. And when you look down, you lose the eye contact with the person. So rather than lose the eye contact, I'll try to make it like it's a conversation where it's not a scripted interview. But everybody has a different style, so you should use your style. Okay?
Thank you so much, but I still feel I should better not have my note here.
No, you'll be fine.
Okay. I heard this interview is the first time for you to appear in Japanese TV show, so I thought, does this mean
maybe it is? I don't know.
Maybe not, but does this mean the Japan market is even more attractive than before?
I am in Japan now because Carlyle has its annual Carlyle Japan meeting. So we do this once a year. And I haven't been here in a few years because of COVID. But now I've come back, and I hope to come back every year. I used to come to Japan 2 or 3 times a year. Probably will come back at least once, maybe twice a year. It's a place that I know pretty well, and I enjoy it very much.
The Tokyo Stock Exchange and stock market is booming this last couple of days, and this is mainly driven by the foreign investments. Why Japan market turned so attractive to foreign investors?
Well, many people want to invest from around the world in Asia, but it's been very difficult and is difficult to invest in China today. Much more constraints than before. So if you want to invest in a good economy in Asia, obviously Japan is an economy with fairly Western standards. It's got a lot of transparency, a lot of integrity. The accounting is very good, the management's good. Now Japan has been, problems have been in the past that the growth has been relatively low, and Japan has companies that are very large and sometimes they don't move as quickly. It hasn't been as entrepreneurial an economy as China has been, or even India. But I think increasingly people see that Japanese companies are well run. They make very good products and services. And the yen has gone to the level that makes it attractive as well to invest here. So I think you're going to see more and more Western investment in Japan, in large part because investing in China is more challenging than it used to be.
And also, Bank of Japan might change the monetary policy after a long time under the new governor, Ueda.
Yes. The Bank of Japan had a long-term governor, very well known, and he's retired. And so the new head of the Bank of Japan probably will have policies that will be a little bit different. And I think they will be ones probably coordinated much more closely with the United States and with the EU.
Then that Governor Ueda might change the monetary policy somewhere in this year, but might be not. Might be in the next year.
Well, it'll take a while for the policies to change. I think the former chairman of the Bank of Japan was there so long that I think he was probably not going to change very much because he was just set in his ways a bit, but a very talented person for sure. The new chairman of the Bank of Japan is, I think, going to bring in some fresh perspectives, and I think a lot of people in the West are looking forward to what he's going to do.
Yeah. So, do you expect the big change in Japan after the policy change?
I think that the Japanese economy is going to grow again at a very good level. I think Japan obviously grew at a very low rate for a while. As we all know, Japan had a deflationary economy for a while, and I'd say that the growth was very, very low. But I think Japan is coming back, and its growth is going to be pretty good. And I think the Prime Minister has done a very good job of trying to attract more Western capital into the country. And to keep the growth, the companies have to pay more for the people, for the capital, the employees. Yes. But this year it was perfect, 3.7% compared to the previous year. But it seems a little bit lower than this year, next year. So, well, in Japan, like in the United States, there's been a concern that companies are doing pretty good at making profits, but that employees are not getting wages that keep up with inflation rate. So I think in Japan, there's been some concern that employees are not getting wage adjustments that are comparable to what they should get given the inflation rate. And I think that's going to change, and I think the Japanese companies will recognize that. Do you clearly find the Japanese companies to recognize it? I think increasingly the Japanese companies are going to recognize, and they do recognize, that they can't keep their employees if they don't make changes. Historically, as you know, when you work in a Japanese company, you're there for life. That's changed a bit over the last 10 years or so. And so Japanese employees are more willing to look at alternatives than just the one company they went to out of college, let's say. And one of the reasons they're going to be looking at alternatives if other companies are paying higher wages. Historically, Japanese companies didn't have to pay that much if inflation went up because people weren't going to leave the company. But now I think there's a greater predisposition in Japan than there was 10, 20, or 30 years ago to look at alternatives if your wages are not keeping up with inflation. I read one article, the 10 to 20 years ago, the Carlyle was focusing on more the cost cut of the Japanese companies. Does it remain about the same, or is it changed by now? When Carlyle set up here more than 20 years ago, there was no history of doing buyouts in Japan. Most of the private investment was venture capital or growth capital, but not much buyouts. We've been a leader in building the buyout market here. Others have come into the market as well. We tended to do relatively modest-sized companies because there weren't larger companies to buy. But now I think larger Japanese companies are selling larger divisions, and I think we can buy bigger companies than we did before. Mm-hmm. And we have an Asian fund as well, and our Asian fund has a lot of capital that it can also invest in Japan. And working with our Japan team, we probably will do somewhat larger deals than we've done in the past, that's what I think is likely to happen. There's no guarantee, but we have the capital to do larger deals.
So larger deals means not focusing on only for the cost cut, but for more like a running aside altogether.
Well,
Is this
there are
the
two
way?
different. Typically, we've bought Japanese companies that sell to the Japanese market, products or services to the Japanese market, and we'll continue to do that. But we're increasing when you buy larger companies, the larger companies have customers that are outside of Japan, and we now are going to look at those companies as well. More global companies that are based in Japan.